Oops. Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
I'm gonna make you co-host because I think I didn't do it last time. So you'll be able to see and get the people in. So Patricia.
Got it. Okay. Right.
And we were able to do questions last minute. We're
Oh my God, you guys are amazing. Could I just say that?
we just wing it. Hello. Can you hear us? Maybe test your microphone. We can see you, but we cannot hear you.
Okay, how's that?
Oh, that's excellent.
Better.
All right.
And that's a beautiful setup, by the way.
I know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. How's everyone? And who is everyone?
I'm Patricia.
Okay.
I'm from Heels Down, and Nicole is from Equitana.
Yep, I'm here from Equitana, USA.
So you're the one that Tiffany has been communicating
Yes.
with. Okay,
That
what?
would be me.
Great. Great.
I'm sorry,
So,
what was your question?
no, I would say it was good that she was able to get this stuff to me in
I
time.
know, so last minute.
Yeah.
And where are you based?
I'm in Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
And where are you based?
I'm in Canada, so the other side of the border.
All right, our cousins.
Exactly. We're not too far from
No.
Hartford. It's not like the California people.
How many are you expecting, Nicole?
You know, I can never really tell anymore. So we do have the 3 panelists, and then Patricia has a really good following with Heels Down. So I would say maybe a dozen or so, and then it will be pre-recorded and we'll be displaying it on the Equitana website. So it'll be shareable after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of people watch after.
Yeah, that's where most of
The important thing is to get a good conversation going and things that they can use.
Right. And what's the end game for this particular Zoom? What is it that you're trying to accomplish?
Well, we'd like people to understand more about programs such as yours and potentially how they can get involved with their own farms or, you know, affect their communities in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, good. I see there's a lot of movement in this area of inclusion.
It's been long overdue. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope it catches. I hope it works.
Yeah, I think that like there's no turning back. I think that it was like such a big. I think the movement is going in the right direction. I don't think it's going back how it was.
Yeah.
Well, I've been around a little while, and I've seen movements before, and I've seen where it didn't change much. It was complementary, and it didn't really materialize into a whole lot because there are some industries that are just controlled by capitalism or classism. Mm-hmm. And there's no underpinning that, there's no changing that. So, you know, we have to see what's really done this time.
Okay, so we have Miguel. I'm gonna ask you to unmute and just test your microphone.
Okay, good. I'm expected to be out of here. I'm in the bank. I expected to be out of here by now, so I should finish in 1 minute. I waited almost an hour in line. Thought I'd be done, but I didn't finish it right now, so.
It's all right. Well, we hear you perfectly.
So I'll mute 1 second.
Poor guy. I called him yesterday. He was like, "Can I call you back? I'm in the TSA line at the airport."
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Becky, are you just you're gonna be not visible? No, I'm talking to someone else. Okay, so we can hear you. Are you gonna do this from your phone, or are you going somewhere?
I'm gonna sit in my car.
Okay.
Do it there.
All right.
Perfect.
Okay.
I'm gonna turn my alarm off.
All right.
It's one of those days. Okay, I'm situated.
We have David. I'm gonna ask you to unmute and test your microphone.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. So we hear you perfectly. And is that it, Nicole?
Yep, that's everybody. Kim from, oh my goodness, from Ride to the Olympics might be joining us later. She's on another call for about half an hour.
Okay. So we'll get going. Just, I don't know if there's, like I say, we start at 2.
Okay. Alrighty.
Unless you want to share it on the Equitana page.
It's funny, I was waiting for marketing to do that. I think they've been a little swamped today.
Okay. So just as a last minute, in case people want to join, that will record and you can put it on the website.
Let's see. Yeah, they're not in right now. All right, well, we
The
can
marketing people?
Yeah, they're all away. I don't know what's happening today.
All right, no worries. So start.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Equitana USA Equestrian Celebration. We were all hoping to be in Lexington, Kentucky at the end of the month and see you guys live, but in lieu of that, we have a month-long virtual celebration with a lot of important topics and a lot of our presenters that you would have been able to see at Equitana and you will get to see next year, October 1st through 3rd at the Kentucky Horse Park. And with that, we have a very important panel today. We're discussing closing the gap, improving accessibility and opportunities for all equestrians. And this is a topic that has been very much at the forefront of the industry at the moment, and it's one that we need to keep having a conversation on to affect real change. So I'm happy to join with Patricia today from Heels Down Media and get this panel started. So I'll toss it off to you.
I'm excited about this panel because this is a subject that we've written a ton about, accessibility, but more from the perspective of show horses and, you know, how horse shows are expensive and that sort of thing. And I'm excited to learn more about your program. So David, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and also tell us about your program.
Hello, my name is David Silver. I'm the founder and executive director of Detroit Horsepower. And a little bit about myself. I originally grew up on the East Coast in suburban New York, and horses were a big part of my life growing up. My mom grew up with horses and made sure that was available to me and my younger sister. Started in hunter jumpers and moved to 3-day eventing, which was pretty awesome. But it wasn't until later in life, graduated college and became an elementary school teacher on the west side of Detroit, that I had a fuller perspective of the incredible privileges I had been given through these opportunities through horses, and how the life lessons that I was working to instill in my 4th and 5th grade students in connection with the research on social emotional learning, the connections to confidence and perseverance and empathy were all lessons that I had learned through horses, which traditionally aren't available to kids growing up in inner city Detroit. And so I decided to leave teaching to start Detroit Horsepower to make these positive youth development opportunities to more kids like my students.
And how many kids do you have in that program?
So Detroit Horsepower currently brings young people from the city to partner barns outside Detroit. Before, in a typical summer before COVID-19, we would have more than 100 students each summer, and we continue to have, we had a much smaller season in 2020 because of the restrictions placed by the virus. But we do have a very active year-round cohort that meets through the school year of 20 students. And we're on a path to open a facility of our own on vacant land in Detroit that will allow us to scale the number of youth we can serve, the opportunities that they'll have as a part of our program, and contribute to stronger Detroit neighborhoods by turning a 14-acre demolished school site into an urban equestrian center by 2023.
Okay, and Miguel, how about you? Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you represent.
Yes, so as a kid, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and fell in love with horses as a kid going to a summer camp. And when I returned home, you know, all I talked about was horses. And of course, there weren't any horses in my neighborhood, but my great-grandmother afforded me the opportunity to have lessons on weekends, on Saturdays. And, you know, it was a very special thing to be able to take riding lessons. And I ended up, working at the barn, trying to spend as much time as I could there, cleaning and taking lessons and so forth. I attribute that experience to changing the trajectory of my life, in that while home and not being able to ride horses during the week, I spent a lot of time reading about horses. And so I pretty much kind of relived that moment in my time with horses through the books. And even not being a great student at the time, uh, that was my preparation for college, quite frankly. And I was able to go to college and do a lot of the things. And so that whole experience kept me around horses year round. I ended up getting a job teaching riding in the summertime, summer camp programs. I was exposed to, I had jobs working at the racetracks, galloping horses in the mornings before school. And it just opened a lot of opportunities, but more importantly, it created a lot of relationships for me that I otherwise would have never had. I was able to meet people in these areas that would have never came to my neighborhood. So as an adult, and I play polo now, I was I was riding, I was playing one day, probably about a few years ago, and a gentleman told me, he said he had never seen African American at that particular barn playing polo. And it just hit me that day when he said that you know what, I should have a greater sense of responsibility to share this opportunity with kids who may be growing up in the same situation that I grew up in. And so I founded the Riot to the Olympics Foundation, and I named it that because there's never been a African American to ride on the equestrian team, the United States Olympic team. So through that program, which is about exposing inner city kids to opportunities in equestrian sports, we have different programs such as Day at the Barn, where we just take local kids and take them out to a barn and let them experience what it's like taking care of a horse and that type of thing. We take them to shows, different types of equestrian events such as polo matches, show jumping events, rodeos, and things of that nature. And we have a lesson program for them. So kids that come out and get exposed and like it, we try to create opportunities for them to continue their riding and continue to pursue whatever their passion is in the areas of riding. But we also try to give them opportunities to work at the barns. I think I learned a lot about just responsibility and take, for me, that was always just as much joy in the work as it was in the riding, just being able to be around the horses and being able to clean. And, I couldn't clean my room, but I can clean a stall. Okay. So I get that. It's different. You would clean up behind a horse, but you couldn't clean up behind yourself. So, but it was a special journey. I know that a lot of kids in my neighborhood ended up in in bad situations. I think that, me not having the time to do those types of things, me not having the interest, and you have to, give kids opportunities to do other stuff. So what we did, so I started a foundation. Last year, we created the first uh, polo team at a historically Black college, at Morehouse College. So my foundation founded Morehouse College team, and we are looking to start teams in other historically Black colleges around the country. We last year, when I introduced the team, we introduced them at my annual event where we raise money. It's called the Atlanta Fashion and Polo Classic. It's a big party fashion show with a polo match. Last year, when I introduced the team, only one of the players actually rode horses. It's very hard to find 3 Black guys that can ride a horse, let alone play polo at a Black college. So we had to find guys who just had the interest and the heart and the desire. And we got them the lessons, and we got them involved in the game. We got We have a great team of guys. We have 4 guys on the team. They've been stuck through the whole year, even after the falls, even after the pandemic, even after all the problems associated to starting something for the first time. They persevered, and on October 11th, they will take the field in their first public exhibition play, and we're trying to get them matched up against Emory University for that day. So I know that's a little long-winded, but I apologize for the time. But very passionate about this, and very excited too that to see the others are very interested in changing the course of lives through this. I just think that I attribute horses for where I am in life. I'm a fashion designer, and been blessed to do a lot of great things in fashion, and my background with horses are definitely the start to this process for me. So
awesome. Let's get Patricia in. Tell us about your program.
Well, I would like to really hear some more about Miguel's program. I need to take a road trip. I think I had kind of a similar situation, except my parents bought a house in almost a predominantly white neighborhood in the 50s. I was about 8 years old, and it was right next door to a Jewish grocer, Mr. Fisher, who had a horse and wagon. And I always say that I thought Mr. Fisher saved me, because it wasn't very popular for us to be in this neighborhood, and the neighbors made it very difficult for us to be there. But Mr. Fisher and this horse saved me. There was a day when the residents the woman who sold the house to my parents was a Holocaust survivor. And they drew up a petition and said, you come and explain to us why you sold this house without telling us. And on that particular day, I was peeking from around the side of the house, listening to this commotion, praying that my mother would not come outside. She was part Native American, and you got her mad, it would be a problem. And I heard this, psst, and I looked around, and there was this very large white guy with a white beard and rosy cheeks. And I said to myself, oh my God, I live next door to Santa Claus. And he said to me, little girl, you should not hear that, come. And there was this little raggedy fence between our properties. And he was standing next to, I think, the only horse I had ever seen up close in my life. And he said, little girl, do you like the horse? And I nodded yes. And he said, come. And so I crawled through this fence, and he handed me a brush. It was a rat. I was the weirdest kid on the block from that point on. It was me and Mr. Fisher straight out. So, and the horse never had a name. It was called Horse. And Mr. Fisher taught me to ride. He taught me to care for this horse. That went on for about 3 or 4 years. And then his barn burned down, and the horse burned in with it. Life went back to its mundane, dreary self. You go through high school. My parents could not send me to college, because those days even if you didn't have the money to go, you didn't go. So I went to the Marine Corps to get the GI Bill. So I went to the Marine Corps during the Vietnam era, did service in the Marine Corps, came home, and rode while I was in the Corps, came back home, and had this bucket list of wanting to ride again. And there was a Black group, a Black men's group in Hartford called the Ebony Horse Men, that had been around since the late 50s, early 60s. And this is now going into the early 80s, and they are all retired. But there was this one guy who had a farm with 3 horses, one Black guy. He had a package store on the avenue, and I went to him. And I said, it's a funny name, Puddinhead, I want to ride again. And can I ride? And he said, well, he hated women because he had been married like a gazillion times. And so he was like, yeah, but I don't like women. I was like, well, that's wonderful, because I don't particularly like you either, but I want to ride your horses. And my youngest daughter and I would go out every Saturday, and I got this incredible peace that came over me. And I started to call girlfriends to say, hey, you need to, this is the early 80s, no malls. Mm-hmm. You need to come do this. And it took some arm wrestling to get them out there, but they too found that peace. And so they used to call us the Ghetto Riders because we used to ride his horses through the middle of an avenue in the inner city. And it was fun because God loves fools and babies, and we were both. And so we would just run through the neighborhoods. And there was this park, which we are in now, called Kinney Park, 693 acres. And when we wanted to do the wind and the hair, we would just go there and just ride straight out, you know, just flying. While we were out, these two little boys ran up to us and said, "Hey, lady, is that a horse? Is that a real horse?" And I said, "Yeah, sweetie, where'd you think it was?" He said, "See, I told you it was a horse." And I was like, oh my God, I have to do something about this. So I developed the Ebony Horse Women, and we started from that point on. Interestingly enough, this love of horses that I had, I thought came strictly from Mr. Fisher. I was like 36, 37 years old when I found that my dad had been a jockey and had had a horrific accident and hated horses and absolutely hated it when I started riding. So I was able to connect this passion that I had for horses, not only to Mr. Fisher, who kind of kicked it into gear, but it was in the blood from my father. So the Ebony Horsewomen started, and we're in a people of color community. During the 80s, we had the height of the heroin epidemic here, and we used to bring horses to the projects for kids to ride. And before we could unload the horses, we had to clean needles out of the grass because it was just that bad. But some amazing things happened when we would bring the horses to the projects. All the kids would come out, all the kids. But there were kids that showed this leadership. This one little boy I will never ever forget. He showed up, "Hey, lady, I want to help you." And I said, "Sure, get the kids in the line. Don't let them stand behind the horses." And you know, we would give them pony rides and talk about say no to drugs. That was the mantra then, and stay in school and so forth and so on. And he was just wonderful at that job. We would pack up at the end of the day. And I said, "Okay, sweetie, come on, I'm gonna take you home." And he'd say, no, I live just around the block. And I was like, "Oh, okay. All right." We go to another project. This kid would show up and he'd do his little job and get the kids in line, and we'd pack up. And I say, "Okay, I'm gonna take you home." No. I just live right around the block. And, you know, being, you know, so consumed with getting the horses back and it just didn't faze me. The third time we went out, he showed up and did his job. And I said, "Come on, let's take you home." I said, no, you don't live around too many blocks. You live around too many blocks. This kid was following us around because he found purpose, pretty much what Miguel is talking about, in his little job of keeping the kids safe from the horses, and his purpose in doing that. I finally had to take him to Salvation Army because he was living in abandoned houses. But he would follow us from project to project to project because he found purpose. So the whole organization began to gear towards that. Now, this is Connecticut, and I'm a cowgirl. And it was clear to me that if I was going to expose the kids to the full breadth of what Connecticut equestrianism was, I would have to teach them English riding. And so I had to learn it myself. Being a cowgirl used to sitting in a rocket chair, you know, I had to learn it myself. But when I did learn it, it was able to get the kids who came to the program out into horse shows. Not for ribbons, not at all for ribbons, but to understand the difference between classism, racism, and business. So they could understand that in this industry, this is what it is. And so today, it evolved itself into what our main offering is equine assisted psychotherapy. Okay. But we went in through a cycle of understanding that it was dominated as a white space, that the therapists who were licensed and certified to do equine assisted therapy were white. There was an automatic disconnect between them being able to provide equine assisted therapy to people of color because the cultures did not understand each other. And this white space made it difficult for that. So the program involves pretty much like everyone else's. Everyone takes riding lessons. They go out to horse shows, they compete, but the underlying foundation here is to resolve trauma that a lot of African American, Latino children, indigenous children experience by living in America. And it's done through equine assisted therapy. Now, I get kids from all over. We do about 300 a year. When we have a dressage team, we have park rangers that are all African American, Latino boys and girls, and all the other kind of, programmatic things. And they all think they're here to learn how to ride horses, but every one of them is in therapy in one fashion or another. And we've had marvelous successes from graduation from high school. 82% of our kids graduate from college with a 4-year degree from many of the most prestigious colleges in the country. And it's all because of really equine assisted therapy. So
let me get David in on the urban aspect. So when you moved to Detroit, you were teaching in an urban area. I live in an urban area myself, and it's all gray. There's even parks are not super accessible. So what do horses, how can people in these neighborhoods get, other than your programs, and which are few and far between if you compare with, all cities, how can they even access this sport?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how great it is to share a screen with Miguel. It's a pleasure to meet you, and Patricia Kelly. It's an honor to be on Zoom with you. Ebony Horsewomen Incorporated was absolutely an inspiration as we were getting started with Detroit Horsepower. So I'm grateful for your knowledge and trailblazing in this space. To speak to Detroit's context, Detroit used to be the 4th largest city in the US with almost 2 million people, and now we have just around 650,000. And so it's a large geographic area. You can side by side fit Manhattan, Boston, and San Francisco within the 139 square miles of Detroit city limits, and about 23 square miles of those are vacant land, residential areas where abandoned homes have been torn down, or industrial spaces that businesses moved out of the city and need new and creative purposes. So in our case, the right fit for us has been this demolished school site. Fortunately, a really large fire and the building had to be demolished in 2012, and the school district didn't have a plan for this property. It's just been sitting as an open space, a hole in the neighborhood. And when we approached community leaders, nonprofit institutions that have been supporting community development, block clubs, and hosting some pop-up events, bringing horses to the community, which is not really what we specialize in, but an important part of raising awareness and building community connections. The critical piece was not just that this was a good space for horses, but this fit with what neighbors wanted to see for their community's future. And so finding that pairing took a considerable amount of time. We just were able to reach an agreement with the school district last October 2019, because it took years to build the relationship and the trust and the community support, and to negotiate with a large bureaucratic institution as well. But we feel very confident that horses have a unique match of research-based youth development effects for our most vulnerable children, and the ability to transform a large amount of vacant land into a community asset.
Yeah. And Miguel, riding is seen as a luxury in North America. So how do you change that perception, or is it a different model that we need in general for the sport? Because it's seen as most people who ride, they have to buy their own horse, or they have to lease a horse. It's a big barrier. Oh, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
I had unmute. I'm sorry. So, horses are expensive and they have to be fed. They need large areas to be at. So it's, I think what David is doing is a great way to offer access, by having places where kids can go and ride that won't cost them money. One of the things we're trying to do is, through partnerships with local barns and, through donations, we able to get lessons and get riding equipment and get the things that kids would need. I don't think you can make having a horse cheap, but people can contribute to the opportunities for others to do it. It's just like golf. I think, one of the things, golf has some challenges with kids being able to have access and play. It's an expensive sport, but, golf was brought into the communities. I mean, through, I think the Tiger Woods Foundation and things of that nature, in youth tea programs, they were able to create programs focused on the disadvantaged. And so I think while you can't change it, and let me say this too, I think that's one of the things that probably adds confidence to the kids. Ms. Patricia was talking about, these kids that graduate from college. The first step is having confidence in yourself and believing that you can compete and operate with others. When you take something that's so far away from, polo is the king sport. You take a kid and teach him how to play polo, guess what? There's no other barrier out there that he will feel that's unattainable, because this is probably the highest level of, access. So, creating opportunities for them also creates confidence. It creates the ability to do more things. It's just about, and our goal, and I think the goals I'm hearing about from David and Patricia as well, is you can't change it from being a luxury event, but what you can do is give access and give opportunity. So I think that's the focus, that's the drive. And I think that what you all are doing, and I want to just say, Nicole and Quan, all you guys, for even making this a topic, making this a priority, because it doesn't work with just the Miguel Davids and Patricias of the world. We have these little situations that we're working on. I'm saying little, but the thing is, it's going to take the majority for this to be something we all have an interest in, for the real change to happen. Because otherwise it's just these little pockets of situation. You all create the opportunities that funnel the resources to organizations, to the communities, to situations that can create the change. So I applaud you all for even making this a something of interest and focus for your organizations as well.
And are all your programs privately funded, like through private donations or corporate donations, or do you have any government support?
We haven't had any government support.
No. Like
but
local.
yeah, we're working on some things and trying to get grants written and that type of thing. But it's all a process, and most of the stuff, like I said, this our big event every year is the Atlanta Fashion Polo Classic. So that's been our main fundraiser. Trying to create some. I think the thing is, our biggest issue, people don't know about us, and so I think it's an educational process, and everyone didn't have the experience I had. So I think a horse. What difference does a horse make? You know what I mean? So they'll see value in other things, not because this doesn't directly say the change it creates in lives through the exposure and so forth. People don't always make the connection with how, for instance, Patricia says kids are going to college. Well, that's a result of the effort and energy they and changing the mindset and educating the kids. And like you said, it's a trauma. That's real truth. I remember as a kid, I was telling Nicole yesterday, riding out to the barn was therapy for me. Leaving the city, because as a kid growing up in an environment where you're around predators and you're around situations that don't me and you well. She talked about the needles and the drugs and all the other things that kids face day to day that the average person doesn't have a clue about, has no idea what they face when these kids go home, not being able to eat, all types of things. But that ride out to the barn was one of the most amazing experiences for me, just seeing a change in scenery. And when I got out there and I could just let my shoulders drop, I relax. When you're home, you know, you keep your neck on a swivel, because you always having to watch out for some situation that most people never have to think about. You know, so it's just a whole different. I think as a Black young man too, just, you know, the concerns we have are very different than anyone else's. You know, I the concerns as a parent. You know, I hate to say it. You know, the police situation is real. You know, I would willing to bet you that every single Black man in this country has had a negative encounter with police, and all of us not bad people and not creating it. You know, because, you know, just by being this thing called black tax. Okay, we have to pay sometimes, and it's the cost of being Black that most people don't realize that there's a you know, not all people, but there are times and moments where you are paying that tax. So, you know, so I'll leave it there.
Patricia, what's the community support for your program?
So we're in Keeney Park, which is 693 acres. It's a rarity that a park this size is in a people of color community. We've been in this location going on 22 years, and it has brought a sense of calmness. This is considered a safe zone. And there are a lot of stuff. We're in the highest crime community in the city of Hartford, Connecticut. And this has been considered a safe zone ever since we've been here. We had one break-in, and whoever broke in, some kids, they went in and ate ice cream, cleaned up, and then went in the back and played with the horses and left. They could have taken computers and all kinds of stuff. They ate the ice cream and they cleaned up. They actually cleaned up and left. So the mindset of the people of the community around us understand that we're a safe zone, and we bring a sense of calmness to the community. But what Miguel is talking about in terms of what these kids face on a daily basis, it's real. It's real, and it's boys and girls. So we get a lot of kids from the court system, you know, the real tough guys who come in, and a lot of the Latino boys who come in, hey lady, I could ride, my aunt had a horse in Puerto Rico. Can I ride your horse? I said, get up there, sweetheart, go get up there. And before you know it, the horse is running around the ring. They're like, hey lady, stop the horse. This horse is crazy. I said, no, baby, the horse is not crazy. The horse is telling me you're crazy. And so let's see if we can bring all that energy down. And the minute I could get their attention to bring that energy down, the horse recognizes it immediately and begins to kind of level out. And they begin to understand that there's a connection between that energy and this massive flesh underneath them. That then transfers over to, if I can control this massive body underneath me, what else can I control with this? It takes a while to get that transition, that understanding, but that's what's been the essence of our success, that this horse is the major master teacher. But when they leave here, they have a myriad of conditions to face. I'll give you one example, and it can be black and white. There's a bus stop out at the end of the driveway, and with my boys, I had them to put on a hoodie, go out to the bus stop, and stand next to the ladies who were waiting for a bus. He did. We were all watching this little experiment. One little black lady grabbed her pocketbook, tucked it under her shoulder, and moved over. I called him back. He came back and put on his Western hat. Same boy. He goes back out to the bus stop. The lady looks over at him and says, "Oh, you ride horses? You're with this program here to ride?" Same boy. Perception. So when we take our kids to horse shows, they would get that same kind of attention. It was either if we went to the shishi poo poo shows, I call them the shishi poo poos. They're not offended that we were there, and we had the most horrendous blue trailer. We got a new trailer now, but it was horrible. It was really horrible. And they would not be offended that we were there. They were like, oh, look at the little black kids with their little ponies. And they were not offended. And so I told the kids, here, you are not going to get a blue, and my kids could ride. You're not going to get a blue ribbon here because this is classism. The trainers, you don't go to the country club. You know, your little $2.50 horse is not going to stand up to them, you know, $10,000, $50,000. You're not going to get a ribbon here. We'd go to a horse, a farm that's called blue collar. They would grab the babies and clutch the pearls. We're there. This is racism. This is different. Mm-hmm. This is different. You're not going to get a ribbon here because they're appalled that you're here. Then we'd go to another farm where they give lessons. You're not going to get the blue ribbon here because this is business. If you can come in with your little horse from the outside and get the blue ribbon, then mommy and daddy are not paying for any more lessons. But they would all take their little 6th place ribbons, and we'd go out and have hamburgers, and it was a learning. Until that one time we went to a show when my little girl rode rings around everybody. And the girl who got 1st place got off her horse and took her blue ribbon over to give it to my young lady. And the judge walked out of the arena, dropped her head and walked out of the arena. Her mother was screaming, get back on your, and my rider said, no, thank you. I don't need it. I know what I did. And I was like, pack it up, lesson over, let's go. So it's, you know, it's this horse access does so many things to build these children and rebuild them in areas that society has tried to take away from them. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, but it was a good answer. Yes, in terms of the confidence that it gives them, right?
Oh, a tremendous, it's not just confidence, it's a healing. Mm-hmm. It's a healing. It's a healing for when society tells them they're stupid, they're too dark, they don't come from the right areas, they're not involved in a certain group. It's so much, it's a healing. It's a healing of young men telling me, I used to tell them that when my brothers went to school, they used to wear ties and their jeans would have creases in them. And the boys said, Miss Kelly, we can't dress like that. I said, well, why not? Because we'd be targets. Right now we're invisible. If we dress like that, we would become targets. And I'm like, why do you have to embody something like that? But what Miguel talks about, most people don't have a clue about what these kids have to face. But when they ride those horses and then understand that it's the connection between them and this horse, that this horse has the ability to do great harm. But if you connect and he knows that you have him and you got him, that bond, that connection begins to heal them. And they begin to understand who they are. It's so much I could tell you about what happens between a horse and people. It's just amazing. And particularly young people.
So Miguel, you want to add to that?
Yeah, let me say one thing. I think because Patricia didn't know something personal for me. You know, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and where I grew up, there was no other cultures. There wasn't white, there wasn't Jewish, it was just black. And what most people don't realize in our country is how innately racism is built in to create a feeling of superiority for some people and a feeling of inferiority to others. I was at a place growing up where I felt inferior. And it's embarrassing to even say that I hated being black, because everything that I was shown about us was bad. Everything I was shown about white was great. From school, you know, Dick and Jane lived in a beautiful house. These books that we had to read growing up, and they had a nice picket fence around. And you know, I grew up, you know, in a less desirable place. And even on TV, everything we saw, you know, was nice homes, nice situations, the Brady Bunch, you know, and you know, this might have been reality to a lot of people, but it was like a dream to me. And then going out to that barn for the first time, you know, having white kids as friends, you know, as kids, they didn't care about me being black. And we as kids don't look at each other like that, but I had an inferiority complex around them. I didn't feel like I was equal to them. And it took so much to overcome that. So the therapy she's talking about is real. And, you know, I'm not saying it's the same way today, but this is still, you can't help, okay, in our country, but to feel certain ways, regardless, and it's all going to be driven by color. You're going to feel certain ways because of your color, and you can't help it because it's so, you know, regardless of your efforts, energies to not be a certain way, we are all affected by color. And
well, on that note, Miguel, let me tell you, I can't tell you how many times people come here for a meeting with Patricia Kelly and expect to see a white woman. I can't tell you how many times. And when they come and they say, I have a separate office from the main office, I'm here to meet with Patricia Kelly. And I say, oh, wonderful, I'll be with you in just a minute. And I get this look like, it can't be you. And when we could be meeting about sheetrock, and when they come in, it's like, well, how did you get into horses? Now I got to give my resume, because you can't be doing this. And so when that feeling of inferiority is what, even though we're around vicinities where whites live, that same thing that Miguel is talking about, our kids walking, and not only just because you're black, but if you are of a darker hue, you got a double whammy against you. And I have found that in the suburbs, those spatterings of blacks who are taking lessons in the suburbs, they're of fairer skin, predominantly. And there's a reason for that. So there's so many layers to this that it would take more than an hour.
Yes, exactly. Is the secret, though, to bring the programs more attention so that people see more, you know, of riders of different backgrounds, and have it be more, not the norm as a sport or as but I think it's not a visible sport or a hobby. It's still.
I have a skepticism about that. I have a notion that the farms that are in the suburbs would not welcome a large degree of ethnic people coming to their facility for fear of losing paying customers. Now that could be just a Connecticut thing, but it's all right for a few. But if a lot of black kids were to start filtering through, I think they would not feel comfortable with the fact that they would lose the echelon appearance of a higher echelon with these ethnic kids coming through. When we first opened up in this facility, we had a large Jewish population that came here to take lessons because they felt a fair amount of discrimination in the suburbs, and they refused to pay and get that kind of discrimination, so they took their lessons here. So I would love to see it happen. I'm just skeptical.
Well, one thing I think as a golf has kind of been a roadmap for us, I think, if you think about it, because at one time, golf wasn't looked upon highly for people of color, and I play golf regularly now, and I think the mindset has changed, and that where it's more acceptable for everyone. You don't look weird playing golf today as a black man. You used to look like, okay, wow, a black guy playing golf, and so that was so I think that over time that perception can change as people become more accustomed to seeing kids of color at the shows and competing and all that type of stuff. So I understand your skepticism for sure, but I just think looking at golf and going through that whole process. I remember, I played golf when it wasn't so popular, and it being okay when Tiger came out. It was always kind of a joke as a black guy, that you're playing golf, and it was, you in the '90s, it was definitely a lot of still that type of thing going on, but it's not, it's common now, I think, more so to see. So I'm not saying it's, we
Well,
probably still a large, small percentage.
Who's the Tiger Woods in the horse industry then? Who's the
Well,
Tiger?
I'm saying we're going to create that one. We're going to create the Tiger Woods. He doesn't exist yet. So that kid, that's why I told you, I named my organization Riot to the Olympics. And who knows, one day we may have that first African-American Riot Olympic. We almost had it with Sheila Johnson's daughter. She's a, well-known rider in the show jumping and Grand Prix level riding.
Paige?
Yeah, exactly. So we've had some kids ride it I've rode with people who rode, Grand Prix level riding. It's just that they don't get the notoriety, nor because kids don't have the access to it either. It's like, so it's still something that happens over there. You know what I mean? It's not something in my neighborhood. It's not something I can do. So what we're doing, David, Patricia, myself, and I'm sure many others are creating access. And through access, you will find talent. And through talent, you'll find higher levels of passion and desire to ride at higher levels. And we'll have the resources to, right now, a kid can wanna or even have the talent to ride at a Grand Prix level, even at higher levels of polo. And, now we got the, work the ride program in Philadelphia. Those kids got deals with oh, no. Sorry.
You left.
My apologies. I had a call. We had ride to the work the ride program, and those kids, have gotten a lot of notoriety for riding stuff. So, change is happening, and just creating access and opportunity is going to be a big part of the process. And with this right here, what we're doing today, I think is a part of that process.
Yeah, same. David, what do you think the solution is? Is to get more kids into those programs?
Yeah, I think there needs to be inspiration and people showing what's possible. And I think the Olympic level could definitely do that. But I also think it can come from people within our students' own communities being those role models and mentors and showing them the way. I think there's definitely that possibility, but I also think that having the accessibility that Miguel talked about is the foundation for Detroit Horsepower. At our current state, for the last 5 years, we've been bringing students from Detroit to partner barns outside the city that allow us to access their space and their horses for us to come in and implement our summer camps and our after school program, which is great, but it's very time limited. To Patricia's point about that relationship has a definitive start and an end time, and then we go home. It's not a permanent place that's accessible anytime our kids want to go out there. It is a big geographic barrier, and we're only able to travel to our different partner barns based on the availability that that we're granted. And so we're extremely grateful to the dozens of barns that have been extremely generous and opened their doors to allow us to facilitate our programming in their space. But having a space of our own that our students own, that's both geographically accessible, and it represents their voice and identity in that environment, rather than always going to someone else's house and being a guest. They can be the ones running the show and build long-term relationships with those horses and have the kind of security and the safe haven that exactly like Patricia talked about. So I think having that strong foundation on which many, many young people can build on creates a wider pool of young people of color growing up with these opportunities with horses. And whether that turns into an Olympic rider or not is not so much Detroit Horsepower's focus, but wherever our students take the life lessons that they learn through their experiences with these incredible animals is a success for us, as long as they're learning from these social emotional skills on a path to graduate high school with a choice of college or career. And if they choose to pursue horses in college, or a career in the horse industry, or a well-paying job that allows them to have horses as a hobby, or not have horses at all, but to hold on to those social emotional skills that horses taught them. Those are all outstanding outcomes for Detroit Horsepower.
So Patricia, the wider equestrian community watching this and probably compelled by these programs, how can they get involved, or what do you need from people who don't necessarily live in your neighborhood, that a little bit the wider equestrian community?
I think one factor is representation. Because of the conditioning of racism in America, our kids are conditioned to not trust someone that doesn't look like them. And if they go to these other facilities, I think it would be better served if they were met by people at those facilities that look like them. So that inclusion on the level of the service provider helps. One of the things that helps us is that for the Black and brown, and it's not just only Black and brown children that we serve, but for the Black and brown children, when they come here, they understand, we understand them, they understand us, because we're in the same culture. I understand their struggles, I understand their fears, I understand how to speak to them, which is so critical. And they know, and there's social cueings that's within the culture that I understand, the cultural language. We understand it back and forth. I can give a look to my kids and they know immediately what that means. No word spoken, just a look. So there is that matching of the cultures together. So one of the things, again, to kind of come full circle, I think, is representation. Taking African American, Latino, Indigenous people out into the suburbs and they're met with this white space. I think that it would be better served if there was representation, number one. Number two, that the mindset isn't of, oh, look at this little Black kids, let's see what we can pat them on the head and oh, just so you can feel good about what you're doing, but rather than, let's see what we really can do to kind of further along whatever it is that these kids need, rather than a feel-good kind of experience for you, which they pick up on immediately. And then I think, that if we could start with incorporating those kind of things, changing the mindset of why are you doing it? Why? Why? Is it that you really want to have inclusion and diversity? Are you feeling forced to do it because all of the unrest in the nation now? What is it? What's your end game? What is it that you're really trying to provide? It's just like, no, I gave at the office kind of thing. Not that. It's those kind of things I think we have to really flesh out.
Mm-hmm. It's a big, but is there anything, so you're saying that different barns should be, like, should really be aware of what they're doing?
They should understand why. At the very least, you understand, why are we, looking for these ethnic children to come to our facility? Is it pressure? I don't want to be called racist. I don't want to stand out as the one that's not doing it. Why? Are you really trying to provide access? And if so, let's get somebody on your staff that looks like them.
Mm-hmm. And Miguel, what do you think the wider community, same question, how can they get involved, or what should they?
Well, I think, we all have different experiences, even as Black people, we have different experiences. Mm-hmm. I have found that most of us, given most people, like I take these kids to horse shows, and they'll see a large group of Black kids, and a lot of people are very kind and gracious, and like, listen, I like to do something in my barn for your kids one day, or you can bring them out here, or we can do this and do that. So I have a lot of belief and faith in people that, given the opportunity, would choose to, be kind, be gracious, and sharing. Now, so we depend on the kindness of everyone to help us further our access and opportunities, because there aren't many of us who own barns, who have farms, who have situations. So we are, and like, unlike Dave, I think what he's doing is phenomenal, getting a place. But access is so important. Okay, so you can have a kid that can easily access this one particular barn, but what about that kid that's across town, an hour and a half away? So our strategy is trying to develop these relationships with people at all corners of the cities that we're in, to also diversify the opportunity. So some kids may have an interest in show jumping. Some kids may have an interest in polo. So we just can't have enough of those type of opportunities. That's me right there, boss. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just suit. So yes, buddy. Yes. All right. My apologies. Marketing. So, and touching on what David talked about also, that's why we created we invested in creating a college level team, mm-hmm. in order to have these mentors at the college level for the little kids to look up to and see people like them. And speaking of what Patricia's talking about, when these kids can see a college kid riding for a college team, one of the things we require them is mentorship, So, it's so many ways to do it, and everybody's got a different strategy, whatever. I just think that, my son is coming.
You lost it.
My son is coming. So I don't know how to mute my tennis thing off, but it's it's not one way to kill us. It's more than one way to do it. Everybody's got different strategies. There's no problem with that. And but for us, I've just seen a lot. I had a gentleman. My son was trying to ride. Older white gentleman, offered to give my son 2 horses out of kindness of heart. So it takes community. It takes all of us. And I think here we have diversity amongst us, and it takes that. It can't be just us. It got to be a community of people who see the problem and are doing something about it. That's at the end of the day what it's about.
Wonderful. Nicole, you're going to put you're going to have the different organizations on your website?
Yes, they're actually up there now. You can go on there and go to each of your websites. And again, I can't thank you guys enough for having this conversation. It really is just a start. We are trying to make a difference, but it's kind of like you said, getting enough people in the right places to hear the message and put it into action. We kind of talked about basically 4 pillars here is what I ended up with. We have the access, the inclusion and representation. I thought was a great point, Patricia, that you need to have people that understand the culture and the language and have these kids be able to look up to someone that does look like them. And then showing up, it's almost sad that, you know, you have to take these young kids to horse shows where they feel different and don't look like everyone else, but you hope that generations down the way, because of what they're doing, that won't be the same. But it is sad that we have to do that, and it's got to start with them. But hopefully it will have positive change in the end. And the last thing we were discussing, and hopefully Equitonic can help in this area too, is that it's really hard to show the tangible effects that these kids are getting from being with horses. And it's not as easy as an equation. There's no, you know, this is the proof. And I think that's something, by sharing stories like these, that more people can get a better understanding of how programs like yours work. Hopefully they want to fund it and participate and, you know, make that little change. But again, thank you guys for joining us. Patricia, thank you for being the wonderful moderator that you are. And I'm looking forward to having each of you guys at Equitana, and we'll be talking in the coming months about plans for next year. And again, stay tuned for the rest of Equitana USA's Equestrian Celebration on our website.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Thank
Right.
you.